people are voicing their discontent a lot of the time about the jobs they have. And I think there's a lot of perceptions about work, about how you work and, you know, the times people work for and how long, and, you know, the moments where you have to question what is important once you start looking at things a certain way about the work structure. Now, everyone has to get paid, right? Has to be able to, you know, maintain and sustain. But there was a clip I saw online about the times people work and for how long, you know, and what looks good basically is the sort of perception and the sort of conversation that was taking place, you know, about how long you should be working and what constitutes you hard and being productive. But it was a clip that I thought, yeah, let me play that one and then assess it, because there's something that I've never been a fan of, the mentality of always having to, you know, put on this kind of persona, you know, where you're having to play a game, because that's more or less what it is. But I'll play the clip, and I've got some other clips to play in relation to people's viewpoints about work and how they're dealing with it. And yeah, there's a general, like I say, vibe about it. It's just that a lot of people would not want to speak on it because obviously you've got you've got employers. But the point is, there's a vibe to it, and there's a, you know, of a discontent a lot of the time. It's just that we get on with it because that's the mentality. Although it's good to look outside of that mentality and see the structure for what it is at times, which is old school, a little bit lack of flexibility. But one has to go and make their own assessment of how to, you know, work outside of that eventually when it comes to doing maybe your own ventures. But like the video, and let's get into these clips.
People will see that you're leaving right at 5, and then they'll, you know, think that you're not, you know, someone who goes above and beyond. I think you should be the first person in and one of the last people out. Mm-hmm.
If your scheduled shift says you end at, you're out the job at midnight or out the job at 5 p.m., as far as I'm concerned, that's when you walk out the door.
Really? I think your work ethic should not be based on if you're leaving at 5 or 5:01. 5:01, you're an amazing employee. 4:50, you're not really committed to your job, are you? I don't think that's how we gauge things. I think it's how much energy and passion and hard work you put into your job.
Time means something. The question is, right, to whom?
The First Lady mentioned about, you know, being basically perceived as, you know, working hard and people seeing you coming in at a certain time and leaving on a certain time. It will give this perception that you're basically, you know, not working hard or not, you know, committed. But if you've done your work to a standard within the time, and you've done it knowingly within the standard, and it's been quantified and accounted for, that's all that matters. Being able to fulfill your duties in a productive way within the time frame. Now, if you're dealing with customers, they should obviously know exactly, you know, the work that you're dealing with, in terms of you have maybe, you know, given a time frame of when you're going to maybe get back to them, and you make sure that you do so. So if there's certain things that go over time, you handle it. But if there's certain things that you handle within the time, and you made it clear of your customers, okay, we'll call you tomorrow at such and such time. That's all that matters. You've made things in such a way that you've been so productive that things are organized within the time frame. You know, this playing the game is part of what we've all been indoctrinated in. Of, okay, if you start at this time and then you leave a bit later, it shows you're more committed. No, what shows your commitment is how good you do the work, how switched on you are within the time frame. And that's why I think certain times people have a perception of the structure, because of the fact that it's a game, more or less. Now, people may say that's the game you have to play to get there, but it's a game that was purposely put in for control. And that's where you go wrong. Because when do you get to a point to look at who you are eventually? Because you end up being a robot. You end up being just bogged down. If you're honest with yourself, it's not something that you want. And it's just like, you don't feel, especially for me anyway, I don't think it gets to a point where you feel like you're fluent as you can be. You feel a little bit in a process, and it just feels very mundane. You go to work, come home, do what you do, and it's like a monotonous way of living. But the other lady now, she mentioned obviously it's about being productive, passionate, and all that. Cool. That's good. That's good. But if you're working and you're doing what's required, that's all that matters. Just do the work properly. Passion can be looked at differently to others. People may think passion evokes more of your intensity in terms of how you come across and, your vivaciousness. But there's some people that show passion in a different way, more maybe laid back about it, but they're content on how they do things. So that's another thing. Passion. Are you, how passionate are you about such and such? I'm passionate about earning money. That's what you really want to say. But the point is, it's like you have to, in a way, act to show passion. And I think that's the problem as well, because passion is different. It's perceived differently to different people. And these are some of the things that you see play itself out in workplaces and offices. And it makes you think sometimes, okay, who are you really working for? Are you working for the customer? Are you working for with your employees? Yes. But are you being who you are while you're working? Are you showing what you actually are? I think sometimes there's like a notion like you have to, depending on the environment, it's like you have to be a similar person to the next man or the next woman. And that's sometimes where people get frustrated, or that's where the problems sometimes lie. But it will bode well with what this next clip is, because there's a lady that obviously she works and she's not happy with it. And she makes it very clear why. And it also coincides with that first video, just based on the perceptions of how when you're working, one thinks they have to be early and go in and leave late. One thinks, oh, it's about the passion that you show. And then one thinks it's all about just being productive within the time. The guy, on the first clip, it's just important, in my opinion, that you're productive. But let's play the video and let's hear what this lady's saying, because, yeah, man, she ain't happy.
I feel like such a brat when I say this, but I hate working. I hate getting ready to go to work. I hate going into work. I hate being an hour into a shift. I hate saying hi to people. I hate being perceived. I hate smiling. I hate it. I hate working. I've worked so many jobs. Every single job I go 2 months in, and I'm like, I fucking hate this job. And I don't know, maybe I just have poor work ethic. Maybe I just am lazy and I just need to come to terms with the fact that I'm just lazy. But I see people that work so hard and they're such good workers, and I don't understand. I've never, and that's I grew up doing competitive gymnastics. I grew up straight A's in school. That was you had to work in high school. I've always worked. I moved by myself, supported myself. I've been working since I was fucking 15, right? I've been working. It's not like I don't work. It's not like I'm just lazy and I do work. I just hate it. I hate it. I hate working. I know everyone hates working, but I hate working so much. And then I see Reagan on her 18th extension install of the fucking week. I'm like, what?
She's just jaded. That's all. She's been working, like you said, she has a history of it. It's just the fact that she's tired of the performance aspect. But maybe, it gets to a point where you have to look for another position. But that's what it is. It gets to a point where you just want to, I think, look, some people just want to go in, have your pleasantries with people, handle what needs to be handled and go. And then they do that again, right? The next day. But the monotony of it, the boredom has coincided with her having this gripe. She's obviously, and a lot of people sometimes start looking at other people of what they're doing, maybe, within different environments and saying, oh, I wish I had this. And yeah, you probably have to be in that environment before you even make that assessment, because certain things look fanciful. But when you realize it's not as, fanciful as you think from the outside looking in. But yeah, a lot of the time people are not happy just based on the monotony of it. Now, she could also be considered lazy. That could be a thing people may think as well. But I think it's all about finding things that are tailored to what you are and who you are and the qualities that you have. If you've managed to actually, find out the qualities that you have. And I think that's the key for people's fulfillment, to be able to seamlessly work in an environment that is maximizing your abilities and qualities. And I think that's where most people would want to be in, but a lot of the time it doesn't happen. People are just thinking of the structure, the process, the fear of not having, and obviously paying your bills, your mortgage, your rent, or whatever it is. You've got kids. We're just so indoctrinated in that state that sometimes it's hard to look at a person like this and think she has any points, because you're going to just assume the typical mentality is, oh, but she's lazy, she's this. I just think that sometimes people are in a position where they need to just find things outside of what is the norm, which is their day to day. But I got another part of this, which I think makes it very clear of what most women, if they're honest, would want. It's just the fact that, again, success and the mentality of success and what is perceived as success has been pushed to us as humans. So we think if we get this and this and this external of our natural disposition, we will be happy. But I think she makes it clear of what potentially will make her satisfied.
I want to stay home and I want to cook and I want to clean. Oh! That's it. I think that's what it is. I think I just don't fucking want to work. I'm such a brat. I'm literally such a brat. Okay, anyways, I'm gonna go work now.
She wants to have a family. She wants to be able to, I'm sure, work, maybe on her own time. Cook and clean, as she said. It doesn't amount to anything. It hasn't amounted to anything. It hasn't amounted to any form of fulfillment. But she's going to go back to work. She said at the end, she said, look, I have to go back. But really and truly, that's probably what it is. Having the structure in the crib, in the home, family, friends, or most importantly, family, kids, and cooking and cleaning. That is not nullifying who she is as a woman. Because at the end of the day, she sees, I'm sure, the importance of, she didn't allude to kids and stuff like that and family, but I think that's also what it is. Because she's not just wants to go home and cook and clean for herself only. I'm sure she's, come to a conclusion that, look, you know what? It probably is more than just about me. I think I need to be fulfilled in the ways that society sometimes, especially if you're a feminist, can frown on, because it puts women in boxes and all that nonsense. It doesn't, fulfilled in ways where it's more than just what society has told you have to be fulfilled in. And that's where I think she came to a conclusion. She wants to do the basics that make her feel, fulfilled. And I'm sure it involves a family. But there's also another clip that I have of this young lady who is seeing clarity, has clarity now about the system and about her viewpoints, about why work, structure, what's important and who is important, and the things that you need to look out for, or she believes you have to look out for while you're in the world that we live in.
If you actually deep it, I know everyone says that law of attraction, speak it to existence. It's true, yes, I get it. Oh my God, life is actually miserable. And if you look around, us working class people are the batteries of this earth. Without us, the world wouldn't run. How the hell would a rich survive? How the hell would the rich do their shopping? Who would build the roads? Who would do constructions? Run the stores? There's millions of things that we do, and yet we are so mistreated. It's like you look around and life is actually really sad. And it's like, this is not the life God intended for us to have. Be slaves every day for a paycheck that doesn't even pay us nothing. We are entitled to 30 days of holidays. The system is corrupt. The way it's run is corrupt. The thing is, not everybody can be rich. We need working class people to run the earth. Why is prices rising but our wages are not? But look around, I'm saying working class people are the most mistreated. Why? Because they need to control us. Without us, there wouldn't be no world. And then they say to us, work harder, get a better job, get a degree. They are distracting us from finding the real picture in life, and that is making it out. Now, how do they control us? They control us by putting distractions in front of us every day, by putting apps and news, food we eat, from where we go to the clubs we party in, the events we go to. This is all a form of distraction to distract us from the real truth of life, which is making it out. Because let's be for real, if you believe in God, this is the life that God has not intended for us to live. We are not supposed to be waking up every single day to get a paycheck that we can barely survive on, being left with no disposable income, waking up every day, hating your life, going to a job that you absolutely hate, but doing it because you're tied down to rent bills or tied down to your car or mortgages, and you don't go, you have no choice but to let go of everything. That is a form of control. If we don't go to work, we're not going to be able to pay our bills.
We're very much, sheep. But people will say, but what's the solution? What's this? Well, there has to be some form of understanding of what you are apart from the jobs you do now. If you get fulfillment from your job, this is not about pinpointing and just, making assessments and, saying, oh, this is bad. No, it's just about looking beyond sometimes the monotonous nature of living and people's perception about, the things that are around why we do what we do and the structures that are in place. She made it clear. Doesn't mean you just have to wake up, go to a position you don't want to do and earn this amount that is basically your living check to check. When do you get to a point where you start looking beyond? Now, not everybody is going to be in that position to want to do their own thing, and that's fine. It's just the fact that if you're in a position, this is more for people, if you're in a position that, involves you being unhappy, then you have to look at things from certain perspectives, because she was right about, look, if it wasn't for a certain, level of person working to make certain people continually rich, it won't be that case. You won't be getting the people just doing what they want at the top, So people are the ones on the, ground level making things shake in this world, and she's making it clear that, hey, there were other things and there's another way to look at things. There's another way to perceive things as opposed to just the way we generally perceive it. And I think she made sense in that.
How do they distract us even more? They put stuff on the TV, they put stuff in our food. Why is fruit and vegetables not growing on our trees in our backyard? Why can't we not pick vegetables in our garden? Because it's a form of control. We don't even have the time to do that, because why? We're so busy trying to build our lives, trying to build a career that they told us to get. And it's like people are so blind to it. And there's only a few who make it out. And there's only a few with a mindset like this where they want to make it out. I feel like freedom is living the natural, organic way that God has intended us to live. And that is, I know it sounds corny, but that's owning a farm, having stock and herds. That is the natural way God had intended for us to live. Yet, look at us. People are so stuck in their lives and stuck in their minds of work. What am I going to eat today? What am I going to cook today? To the point that they're so distracted over the real point of life. It's a whole worldwide thing. There's people that's dying from not drinking clean water, from not being able to eat. Why? Because of how it's been programmed, how controlled by the evil. If you don't realize that the world is being controlled by evil, you are completely lost. There's some people who will die for their job. They're going to replace you tomorrow. Once you realize that this world is not doing good by you, that this world is doing nothing more but to control us, drain us of our energy, and keep us in full control, because the world is not with you, they're against you. And I don't want to get too deep into it.
Yeah, nail on the head again. Very clear, very concise. And hey, I understand what she means. I understand exactly what she means. And it gets to a point where, look, you can keep the routine, you can, see beyond what your position is, depending if you're not keen on your current situation. But at the same time, you have to say, okay, what is the plan potentially to try and look beyond the typical day to day? What is the plan? Is there an action plan that you're looking to put in place? And I'm sure she, like many others, are attempting things. This process that we've been pushed into from school days, college, uni, whatever, the whole structure of this is how it should be done for the benefit of the powers that be. What else can one do within it? There's conditions in this world that have been established to be able to create another way. It's just the process sometimes to get to that point, needs to be done, and it needs to be consistent. And that's the hard part. So that's why a lot of people would rather just have the structure, work within it, because they know exactly every month, every 2 weeks, or whatever your pay, cycle is, it will come in. Most people are in one way, living to pay the bills and living only to do that, until you die, on to the next, family member who does the same, maybe your kids, until something is changed, until you decide to make that change. And I think that's all we have to make, assessments on. If we're happy, cool. If not, you have to look to create your own structure with like-minded people, or start yourself and make it shake yourself, But it will be interesting to find out what people think.